is the Victorian Country Hour with Warwick Long on ABC Radio Victoria.
Yes, good afternoon to you. Today on the program, put on your riding boots, your jodhpurs and helmet and swing your leg over the nearest cow because we're going for a ride.
Well, I've had the idea for a while of riding a cow and I've always wanted to do it. And the other week I thought to myself, you know what, I'll just do it. So I hopped on and my sister was with me, so she was keeping the cows going. And I hopped on and I just stayed on for a while, like about 15 minutes maybe, half an hour.
You're going to meet Cowgirl Sophie on the Country Hour today, and you don't want to miss it, really. Stick around for that one. Also, JBS speaks about its takeover of Riverlea, another record land price, and the terrible tree planting record of government. But next, we're checking in on agricultural shows who are suffering through another tough year of cancelled events.
The Victorian Country Hour with Warwick Long on ABC Radio Victoria.
Actually, just a slight bit of housekeeping before we talk agricultural shows on the program. We spent a large part of yesterday's program with the Minister for the Environment in Victoria, Lily D'Ambrosio, about the new riverfront camping legislation. Here's a taste.
We believe that we've got the right balance here and to enable, of course, people to be able to camp on some of these frontages, accessing that only via public land, not trespassing, of course. Making sure that they comply with a whole bunch of provisions that in terms of good behaviour and good patterns of behaviour on public land, but also importantly balancing that out with the needs and concerns of neighbouring landholders, environmental values and of course cultural heritage values.
There's a lot of trust here in the public to do the right thing, isn't there?
Well, look, I believe that this is not an alien concept. We have had these river frontages that have been licensed, accessible to the public now for a long, long time. What this does is enable the additional experience of camping overnight.
Now, if you want to listen to more of that, you can go back in our podcast. Just search Victorian Country Hour wherever you get your podcasts or look on the ABC Listen app. Now, in response to this, many of you actually forwarded us an email that obviously went out to people who made a submission about these laws yesterday afternoon after the program. Bill was one of those. He sent his email to the Country Hour at abc.net.au. You can do the same, countryhour at abc.net.au. He says, and I quote, I think it was pretty obvious that the Minister had no idea what was in this document when speaking to the Country Hour. Had she had an understanding, she would have surely seized on some of the changes, e.g. reducing the stay time by 50% to claim credit for listening to the submission. Bill, thanks for the email. And yes, more details were uploaded on the restrictions, and here they are by way of knowing the details. So if you want to know what the rules are around camping on some of this land when it does open up, no camping within 20 metres of the waterway. No camping within 200 metres of any nearby residence. Maximum stay 14 nights. Now, that's down from 28 nights that we knew about a couple of weeks ago. So the maximum stay now for camping on these sites is 2 weeks, 14 nights. No dogs allowed. Campers will not be allowed to enter or cross private land without permission. They must leave any gate as found, not interfere or disturb livestock. And on the problem of waste, the government says portable toilets must be at least 50 metres away from a waterway and not on private property. If not disposed of in a portable toilet, human waste and toilet paper must be buried more than 100 metres from the waterway and, again, not on a private property. All rubbish and belongings must be taken with you on departure. Campfires may be permitted in some designated areas, but campers can't collect firewood or damage vegetation. Now, that's a change from the amount of firewood collection that was in the regulations before. So there you go. And even though, I'll repeat what we said yesterday, the camping sites were meant to open up on September the 1st, Minister Lily D'Ambrosio told us that COVID lockdowns have prevented the city-based assessors to go out and check the sites along the Goulburn, Ovens, Campaspe, Loddon and Broken Rivers. So the government says it's still assessing the 27 sites in what it calls the priority areas of northern and northeast Victoria. with hundreds of sites more to follow. When they open up and when we know more, we'll let you know.
On ABC Radio Victoria, you're with Warwick Long for the Victorian Country Hour.
Let's move away from camping regulations and talk agricultural shows. There was another government announcement yesterday. The Victorian government announced $300,000 in grants for struggling agricultural shows. Each show society can apply for up to $10,000, which will pay for 90% or so of an infrastructure project. It highlights, though, the difficulties facing show societies with multiple years of cancellations for some. Rod Bowles is the Executive Officer for the Victorian Agricultural Shows, and he can join us now from Bendigo, where he's based. Rod Bowles, welcome back to the Country Hour.
Yeah, thanks, Warwick.
If I look at your Facebook page, and I'm sorry to say this, it's almost a tough place to be because it's a sea of cancellations on what is normally a really fun calendar to look at, Rod. Another tough year for ag societies that you deal with.
Yeah, look, it is devastating to our rural communities in particular, and again today I've received another one cancelling, and it's they're just going down one after another like dominoes to a degree, which is sad, and particularly for the second year in a row. And I know you mentioned before about the government grants, but these grants are the usual annual program that was released yesterday of $300,000 that's been going for over 20 odd years.
So it's nothing extra than what you normally get?
No, it's nothing extra, and we're quite disappointed that our state government hasn't perhaps stepped up to acknowledge that show societies do need to try and survive until next year when they can possibly run their events. And a lot of them, as they are volunteers and community organisations, haven't been eligible for some of the government subsidies and things that have been going around previously. So we're fortunate last year that the federal government made available $39 million nationally of funds towards cancelled events, being the Royal Shows, Field Days and Country Shows nationally. And that was fantastic money that was able to help cover the incidental costs of those organisations in the way of their public liability insurances and power and water and other ancillary charges that go on annually. Because as you can appreciate, a lot of these show societies either manage their reserves or contribute in some way to running costs. And as I said...
So even if you don't have a show, Rod, you're still spending money, aren't you?
That's right, and a lot of times they commercially rent their venues and things to, have caravan shows, camping, whatever it might be that's been restricted during COVID, music concerts, etc. So they've all lost their sort of cash flow that comes in through the year as well as the cancellation of this show, which is, we as an organisation are very... worried in some terms that there may be some shows that just don't see their way to run again, and there's issues with declining volunteers, but also financial resources will be a major challenge to some of them.
And you can see how that happens, can't you? Those volunteer type events, not having a show, not having the payoff for all of that work that you put in every year, now 2 years in a row for some of these shows. That's how you lose events like a local agricultural show, isn't it?
That's right. That's what's the devastation that they're all experiencing at the moment. And, some of them have commented openly to me that we don't know how we'll trade by this time next year, So, so as an organisation, our plea is, I guess, to our state government to listen to our call, appreciative of the $300,000 grant annually, and we already had communicated to the Minister that we'd like to see some sort of increased level of funds in the future because, what was given out 20 years ago is still the same money now, and things have obviously become more expensive, and that for the societies and infrastructure of their facilities is very important for the ongoing success of their events.
Yeah, so if things don't improve by the end of the year, Rod, are we at the very real risk of losing some shows?
Well, we hope not. Some of these shows are very resilient and their communities get in and around them, and I know there's some that are out doing fundraising of membership drives and, appealing to their local farm areas to get behind them and offer some financial backing or whatever it might take to get them through. But it's going to be a very challenging time. Our knowledge gauge of what happens up in the northern states and I guess the outcomes of shows that have been run. It bounced back very well during a cancelled year, and we're just hoping that after 2 years that the community will embrace these events and get behind it. Let's hope we don't experience a third year. Is it a lonely time for you, Rod? This would be normally when you're gearing up for the busy period, isn't it? Well, it's not. It's been very busy, to be honest, because there's been a lot of communication from all these 75 odd spring shows that are on our calendar, and we're probably around about 60 of those that are formally cancelled at this point. And as a board and an organisation, we are, just mindful of providing resources, and we're running even a program to educate people in how to do their COVID plans and things like that for those that might do things. Now, if the state does open up a bit, then there will be some show societies that might just run their dog show or their horse show or a smaller size event according to the restrictions at the time. So is it going to leave a hole in your record books? For usually there's state champions in different things, and shows can mean you can qualify for other events in things like horse riding and so forth, and dog shows. Yeah. That's exactly right. And when the royal shows come around, it's usually the qualifying pathway to get their horse to those events is going to a number of country shows and getting performances. So that's where there is a real void in, our exhibitors potentially. And, there's horses now that are a couple of years not been out and performed that are either newcomers into the showing world, and there's a lot of retired race horses and things like that that go into the show ring after racing. So, it's missing out on those opportunities at the moment, and I'm sure, as I say, it'll bounce back strongly once the opportunity arises. Rod, good to talk to you. Good luck with getting more assistance, but thanks for telling us about, I suppose, the difficulties and the cancellations that you're facing at the moment. Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity, and, to our show societies, it's very heart-wrenching, and, we've just got to try and hang in there. So, thank you. Good luck. That's Rod Bowles there, Executive Officer of Victorian Agricultural Shows, taking you through not only the grant program they received, as you hear, it's a regular occurrence really, but also just what's facing local agricultural shows. If you're on a committee for a local show, or if you're worried about losing your local show, let us know. 1300 977 222. Would love to get in your mind at a local level about how you're feeling. 1300 977 222 to call. You can text 0467 842 722. We'll talk timber now on the program for a few moments though, because in 2018, the federal government pledged to plant 1 billion plantation trees across Australia this decade. It's been exactly 3 years since that promise, and so far, tree plantings have totalled less than 1% of that figure. So, as Angus McIntosh reports, there's work to be done to prevent the collapse of Australia's domestic wood processing industry.
The Billion Trees Plan was supposed to secure a reliable supply of timber for construction, pulp and log products to serve Australia's long-term needs. Independent Senator for South Australia Rex Patrick took the chance this August to ask how the plan is going.
Well, this is a very sad set of affairs. Back in 2018, Minister Littleproud announced that he was going to plant, or the government were going to plant, 1 billion trees over a decade. Between 2018 and now, the government has only planted 2.8 million trees. It's a drop in a very large ocean, and it just is a complete failure in terms of delivery of the promise. I have asked questions in the Parliament and basically come up with no answers.
The Senator's figures are accurate. Ag Department data shows only 2,800 hectares of new plantations are in the ground since the Billion Trees Plan was announced, well short of the 1 million hectares needed to meet the goal. But despite the lack of progress, Assistant Forestry Minister Jonathan Duniam maintains 1 billion new trees can be planted this decade.
Well, I think we have to be reasonable about this. I want to stick to that goal, and I think that state and territory governments, their respective forestry ministers, also want to stick to that goal. So look, it is a lofty goal, of course, and we have had a number of things that have impacted on that. not least of which are the Black Summer bushfires. COVID, of course, has had an impact on operations at various points in time across the country with lockdowns and whatnot. But we need to work as hard as we can to achieve that goal, and I'm committed to it. And we'll work with industry on making sure they have every tool at their disposal to try and reach that goal. And that includes with state and territory governments who do largely manage our plantation estates across the country. We want to make sure that there are no impediments for them. We'll set the policies that they need to get these things off the ground, and then we will work with them to try and address any other issues that come up along the way.
The Black Summer bushfires absolutely devastated Australia's forests and commercial plantations. But the decline was well underway before 2019. The National Plantation Estate has been falling steadily since 2008. The slow decline has a lot to do with Crown land being withdrawn from plantations and a lack of incentives for private landholders.
Obviously, with forestry, you don't see a return for an extended period of time, anywhere from between 15 to 30 years. I understand 2050 is where they're saying we will have quadrupled demand internationally for timber resources, but there are upfront establishment costs. There's the capacity to recognise better the carbon sequestration abilities of plantation forestry. We have to remember that the Commonwealth doesn't manage a single hectare of productive forest across the country. We're working with states and territories to find ways to ensure that more land is accessible and available for plantation timber.
As Senator Duniam points out, a lot of the management for Australia's forests comes at the state level. Sawmill workers from New South Wales to WA are losing jobs this year as plantation land is withdrawn. Forest Industry Federation of WA Director Melissa Haslam says if the rate of decline continues, domestic processing in the state will collapse altogether.
So our plantations are declining at a time when pretty much every other developed nation is expanding their working forests because they can see the writing on the wall. You know, if we want to transition from plastics, we need something to transition to, and that's going to be paper and cardboard products. And if we want to move away from a lot of steel in construction, we're going to need structural timber. We need another industry to transition to in a carbon-constrained economy. And that is the ultimate renewable. That's our forest industry. And the consequence of that in the long term, of course, is we are just going to be completely reliant on imports. Now, at the moment, through a combination of factors, trees being harvested and then that land being converted to other land uses, might be for residential development, it might have been lost through fire, it might go to other competing land uses, mineral sands or whatever else. But we're seeing a dramatic contraction of that estate. We're on a trajectory to see a collapse of domestic processing here in WA.
That's Melissa Haslam, Director of the Forest Industry Federation of WA, speaking there. Many of you having thoughts on the text line already about this. Someone says, I'm so disappointed about the Billion Tree program. Too little, too late. As per usual with our federal government, says that person. Sue in Ballarat says, I'm not wanting to be cynical, but 1 billion trees? Empty promises? Why plant anything when governments are allowing logging of scarce native forests? Where is Vic Forests? Vic Forests should be concentrating on planting, not decimating forests. They're two very different views coming in on the text line. You can keep them coming. 0467 842 722. On 1300 977 222 is the number you can call as well. We're speaking about country shows and the difficulties they're facing with huge cancellation. I think 70 shows already cancelled for this spring-summer period. Rob Bowles was saying from Victorian Agricultural Shows earlier. Peter's called on Talkback, part of the Dookie Show. Peter, tell us what happened with your show.
So, Warwick, unfortunately we've made the tough decision to cancel our show this year. A couple of weeks ago, our show is the Saturday before the Melbourne Cup.
And it is quintessential country show. I've been out to the Dookie Show. Beautiful showground, sort of 25 minutes east of Shepparton, small rural community. How important is the show to the community usually, Peter?
The show is quite important to the community. So many community groups, the Lions Club, Cubs, the schools, the Historical Society, they all rely on the Dookie Show as their major fundraising for the year.
So, they're missing out on that money right now.
They are, yes. They've obviously taken a big chunk out of their fundraising capabilities and income for the next financial year. This is ongoing from having to cancel last year as well.
Is it tough when you make the call to cancel to ring everybody from these groups and tell them that you're not going to be able to make money on the show this year?
I don't actually ring them. We put it on the social media, the local news article, and of course word of mouth. But I'd hate to actually go having to ring up and apologise to the groups saying that we've had to cancel, because it really is heartbreaking as the president, as well as our committee. Yeah,
so as president, are you losing money as a show committee every year you have to cancel?
So last year we cancelled early enough to last year we had to cancel early enough that we didn't actually incur any costs. This year we will incur some costs. That our ribbons were printed. Our show book was designed. We didn't get printed. We called it before we got printed, but we'll have obviously the cost of doing the computering. There'll be some associated costs. About $10,000, I dare say, we'll be up for.
Gosh, that's a hit, isn't it? Yeah. Well, good luck. And are you confident about next year running at the moment, Peter, given vaccinations and so forth?
I think I'm pretty sure. I was on the back of my mind that was pretty confident about this year, but unfortunately, what's happened in Shepparton over the past 2 weeks has dented my confidence, and that's the only thing going forward is vaccinations, really.
And you're in the line for a COVID test right now in Shepparton, is that right?
Yes, I'm 4 cars away from getting my second test, as well as my 2 teenage children.
What's that wait been like? How long have you been there?
Unfortunately, I chose not to listen to my wife this morning. I chose the stadium testing site, not the showground, so it's been 4 hours.
Oh, well, good luck with it, and I hope it's a negative result, and then you're out of 2-week quarantine, is that right?
Yes, it will be, yeah. Hopefully it will be negative. The kids, I've spent great time with the kids this morning, and my kids. They're not giving me much reaction.
Well, good luck with it, and given you're so close to the front of the line, go get your test, but thanks for telling us about the Dookie Show.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the time, Warwick.
That is Peter, who is the president of the Dookie Show, ringing in to tell us how they're going. Printed the ribbons, nearly had the book printed as well. That just sounds tough for a lot of show societies out there. It's been interesting to get in your mind today. You can keep calling if you want, 1300 977 222. Got a couple of great messages here. Jill from Tynong North says, it's very disappointing for all the ag shows getting cancelled. We enjoy showcasing our Welsh black cattle, and it's just so upsetting that these events are all being cancelled. This bull was the recent winner at our local show, and she's attached the photo of the Welsh black bull looking very shiny in the sunlight on a beautiful sunny show day as well. Thank you very much for sending that through. This one says, hi, Rob Onley, Chief Cattle Steward from the famous Noorat show. We are forging ahead, planning for our show in November. In a worst-case scenario, we plan to run our dairy and beef sections along with home craft chooks, horses and sheep at a minimum. We're excited if you have cows to show in Victoria. Plan to come to Noorat. Well, there's some hopeful show societies still out there, aren't there? Rob, thank you very much for sending that as well. We've got the news on the way, the weather as well. Before we get there, let's talk about the world's largest meat processor. JBS is confident its proposed takeover of the Riverlea Piggery and Abattoir business will be approved by the competition watchdog in the next few weeks. The $175 million deal has to be ticked off by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, and Foreign Investment Review Board. If JBS gets the go-ahead to take over the abattoirs at Corowa and Diamond Valley Pork, as well as the growing out business as well, it would give the Brazilian-owned company control of more than a third of Australia's pig kill. It already owns substantial holdings in the lamb and beef parts of the Australian industry too. The chief executive at JBS in Australia, Brent Eastwood, told Tony Briscoe there is no danger of JBS getting too big.
The ACCC process is ongoing. It will be hopefully concluded in the next few weeks. It's a natural process that we have a pork plant in South Australia. It's a service kill plant, so we don't have any involvement in the pork growing or other processing. So we don't see any change in competition at all We see it as a strong endorsement. We want to grow the pork business in this country. So we have put a very compelling case forward to ACCC and to FIRB. So we would expect that to be approved, but again, we don't know.
Is there a point though that you can get too big and you'll be processing a third of pork, a third of beef, a third of lamb?
It's a large company, but we act locally. That's the thing. We work very closely with the communities we're in, Tony. We don't think big like that. The pork one you're mentioning, a huge part of Riverlea is a service processing, like our plant in Port Wakefield. So we process for numerous customers on a service basis, and we've already given a big commitment to all those pork producers to maintain those service arrangements. There's nothing they should fear in that. The beef side, the lamb side, yes, we are large in all those areas, but still small when you look at the overall size of the industry. So they don't really compete in that regard. So we don't see it as a change of anything when it comes to competition. We see it as an opportunity to grow those businesses. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we've proven in the past.
How should farmers, pork producers, look at the takeover of Riverlea?
Well, I think they should see it as a very strong positive. We also have the Primo Small Goods business, which I'm sure you're aware, which is a very large user of domestic pork. We're very reliant on imported pork into this country. There's opportunity to grow more pork, make more pigs in this country, process more. That's a great opportunity for farmers. That combined with the service kill, no change on the service kill side, they should see it as a positive, and we believe they will. And they've all been invited to make submissions to ACCC. We don't know what they are, but we see it as a great opportunity to work with those farmers to grow the sector.
That is Brent Eastwood from JBS speaking there to Tony Briscoe. You're listening to the Country Hour. Weather is on the way. I know many of you are already asking about the northwestern rainfall. We'll try and get those figures again and update to them anyway. Before we head anywhere, though, let's go find out what's happening around regional Victoria today in the newsroom. For us to tell us that is Tyrone Dalton. G'day, Tyrone.
Good afternoon, Warwick. The Premier's announced regional Victoria is set to come out of lockdown next week, with Shepparton the exception due to its growing coronavirus outbreak. Of Victoria's 176 new cases today, 13 are linked to the Shepparton outbreak and 1 case is recorded in Greater Geelong. Goulburn Valley Health is set to test 4,000 residents in quarantine today as part of Day 13 testing. 6 Victorian local government areas have been booted from the border bubble. The changes came into place overnight and includes the Greater Bendigo, Greater Shepparton, Benalla, Bullock, Loddon and Yarriambiack council areas. Under the tighter New South Wales-Victoria border restrictions, residents in those areas can no longer apply for a cross-border permit. Alpine businesses say the roadmap announced yesterday could spell the end of the snow season for many. Glenn Clark runs a cross-country skiing tour business at Mount Hotham and is yet to receive any business support from the state government. He says without Melbourne visitors and the lack of certainty about when regional Victoria will get out of lockdown, the plan could spell the end of the snow season for this year. The future of some Deakin University Warrnambool staff is again in the balance, with the uni opening up consultation on further job cuts. The university is proposing to axe about 200 jobs as it tries to secure Deakin's financial future in the COVID-19 climate. 6 jobs were cut from the Warrnambool campus last year, among 300 job losses at the university. And the Ballarat Football Netball League has abandoned the remainder of its season due to the ongoing lockdown. As a result of the cancellation, the highest-ranked teams in each grade will be recognised as minor premiers. The league says it will make a call on the future of its junior competition next week, once the future of regional Victoria's lockdown is clearer. That's the latest headlines from across regional Victoria. For more news anytime, you can head online and search for ABC News. Back to you, Oz.
Thanks very much, Tyrone. Tyrone Dalton there with regional news headlines.
You're with Warwick Long for the Victorian Country Hour on ABC Radio Victoria.
About to find out what's happening weather-wise around Victoria. After that, we'll be talking record land price. Obviously, markets are on the way. We'll get them in today. The press conference has already been. Plus, we're writing something unusual today on the program. Yep. I'm just going to say it. We're riding a cow. We're meeting a schoolgirl who's at home. She's been riding a cow. Have you ever had livestock owners? This is obviously out here. Have you ever owned a cow or a bull or a steer that it's been quite enough for you to jump on a ride? I'm not talking rodeo here. I'm just talking as you would a horse, you swing a leg over and you take the cow for a ride. I don't know if you've ever taken them across a jump or if you just get from A to B, put a halter on, or maybe just held on to the back. If you've ridden a cow, let us know. 1300 977 222 or send a photo 0467 842 722. The strangest talkback question you'll hear on ABC Radio today. I am sure of it, but I'd love to know if it's a common thing. I've got my own stories, but we'll leave them for another day. Tom Delamont is a senior forecaster at the Weather Bureau. I'm guessing Tom hasn't ridden a cow, but I don't want to cast aspersions. Tom, anything in your past we need to know about?
Not that I know of. If I did ride a cow, it was before I can remember.
Okay, beautiful. We'll move on and talk about the important things. Blue skies, sunny weather. I'm in shorts in Shepparton today, but it's not sticking around for ages, is it? But let's just start. How hot is it across Victoria today?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, real unseasonable warmth across Victoria today. We're currently sitting at 31 degrees up in Mildura, so a few places have cracked 30 up in the Mallee already. Generally around the mid-20s across much of the state, though, so really exceptionally warm for early part of September. We wouldn't usually expect to see this sort of warmth until towards the end of September. So, yeah, has come a bit early this year. But as you mentioned, sunny skies associated with it. It is quite windy in the northerly flow. We do have the warning out for damaging winds over southern and mountain Victoria. So far, the only gust in excess of 90 kilometres per hour has been at Mount William in the Grampians, where we did have a gust of 115 kilometres per hour early this morning. But yeah, even though we haven't seen a lot of places get up to 90 yet, it certainly is quite windy out there, particularly across southern parts of the state.
And that means we could have some rain on the way coming through tomorrow. I've got a number of questions for you. I'll pick out one. B says, hi, Wazza, can you ask the bomb the ETA on the rain in the East Gippsland region, please? I've got a few things to get done before then. Thanks, says B. But really, for all of Victoria, when are they expecting some rain to hit them?
Yeah, so the rain will start to move across western parts of the state during the early hours of tomorrow morning, and it's probably not until later in the morning that we're going to start to see that rain band intensify a bit, so probably just some light rain around at first, and then the rain band does intensify later in the morning as it moves across western parts of the state. And we're likely to see a band of thunderstorms develop along the front as it moves through central and eastern parts of Victoria tomorrow afternoon into the evening. And eventually those storms will sort of broaden out into a rain area as well. So there is rain expected right across the state tomorrow. In terms of the totals, we're looking at across western Victoria and also into the northern country as well. Falls will be in the 10 to 25 millimetre range, probably closer to that 25 millimetre mark, about sort of the southern and eastern parts of that area, and closer to the 10 millimetre mark about the sort of northwestern parts of the state. But it's really over sort of, I guess, south central and eastern Victoria that we're focusing on for in terms of the potential for some really heavy rainfall tomorrow afternoon and evening. Looks like falls of 20 to 40 millimetres through that area, but it does increase up to 30 to 60 millimetres over the eastern ranges and parts of West Gippsland. So some quite heavy rainfall coming through. A lot of that will be associated with that line of storms, which moves through eastern parts of Victoria tomorrow afternoon. So while we will see the sort of winds ease off during the day tomorrow, the focus is really going to shift towards the potential for some flash flooding over parts of central and eastern Victoria as those thunderstorms move through, producing the heavy rainfall.
Beautiful. And then beyond that, what are we looking at?
Yeah, beyond that, the rain band does linger over eastern Victoria into Saturday. Once again, we could see some heavy falls about the northeast slopes, so there could be some totals pushing up towards 70 or 80 millimetres along the northeast slopes on Saturday. And with all this rain falling over eastern Victoria, we're likely to start to see the rivers respond and some minor to possibly moderate flooding developing along the rivers in eastern Victoria as we move into the weekend. So there will be a flood watch issued this afternoon for that. And, really probably the risk of the heavy rainfall does start to ease in later morning on Saturday, with just some showers to follow and a much colder day right across the state, potentially even some small hail over western Victoria. So it is a switch back to wintry conditions on the weekend. And then on Sunday, we're going to continue to see showers pushing into Gippsland. We could see some moderate falls about central and eastern Gippsland in the 15 to 35 millimetre range on the Sunday. But elsewhere, we're generally looking at falls less than 10 millimetres in those cold southerly winds which continue on Sunday. And a quick outlook into next week, it does look like the showers ease during Monday and Tuesday. We should be back to dry and mild conditions by Wednesday. And a bit more sort of looking beyond that into sort of the medium term, there is a sort of a broad ridge of high pressure around through much of next week. So after this weekend, it isn't really looking like we're going to see much weather or significant weather around Victoria, maybe just the odd shower or two moving through the south at times, but largely a pretty settled week coming up after this weekend.
Tom, thank you for that. Just before I let you go, it's the daily calls for the Northwest personalised rainfall report. I suppose just for the Northwest over the next week or so, what are they expecting in terms of totals?
Yeah, so really tomorrow is going to be a best chance for some rain. If we're looking at the Mallee, the totals do vary a bit across the guidance, and that's due to some thunderstorm activity which could move through. I think most places are going to end up between 5 and 15 millimetres, but there is a chance under a storm you could get up to 25 millimetres, and that's probably most likely along the Murray during Friday afternoon. And then on the Saturday, with those cold air showers moving through, we're generally expecting falls of less than 3 millimetres across the northwest of the state. Largely after Saturday, it does look like we're in for a run of dry days.
Beautiful. Tom, thank you.
No worries.
Tom Delamont at the Weather Bureau taking you through the forecast for the next week or so and some personalised stuff for you in the Northwest. Keep the text coming. If you have a question for the Weather Bureau, more than happy to ask that on your behalf. It is 18-1 here on the country. I did ask, have you ever ridden a cow? Because we're about to hear from someone who's doing just that whilst they're stuck at home. This one says, I used to sit on our house cow named Topsy while Dad milked. That's an awesome cow name. Thank you very much for that. Teresa in Bairnsdale sent a beautiful photo of someone on a big framed Holstein, or Friesian, I suppose. Hey, was one of our best dairy cows when we were milking, could do anything with her. She was our Christmas dress-up cow as well. And the photo is a bloke sitting on this massive cow with his hat off like he's doing a bull ride, and the cow just standing there, doesn't seem to care. Looks perfectly content as it gazes off into the distance. I love that. And a text from A who says, you might think this waffle is funny, but we don't. Well, I know I'm not funny, A. That's why I rely on the audience, and it's wonderful to have their input. And it's also wonderful to take agriculture to people who aren't just farming. That's part of this show's role as well. And I hope you can come on that journey. And if not, well, I'm sorry.
The Victorian Country Hour with Warwick Long on ABC Radio Victoria.
Victorian farm kids have been living under lockdown restrictions for large parts of the last few years, and they're learning some interesting new skills while they're at it. In fact, one's learnt to ride. Not a bike, not a horse, but a cow. Peter Somerville caught up with the Gippsland Year 9 student who is taking lockdown in her stride, finding all sorts of adventure at home on the farm.
Victorian students are now well and truly familiar with homeschooling. It can be hard to stay motivated and inevitably they get distracted. But for some, especially on farms, it's an opportunity for adventure.
Well, I've had the idea for a while of riding a cow, and I've always wanted to do it. And the other week I thought to myself, you know what, I'll just do it. So I hopped on, and my sister was with me, so she was keeping the cows going. And I hopped on, and I just stayed on for a while, like about 15 minutes maybe, half an hour.
Yep, you heard right. That's Sophie Christensen, who lives on a dairy farm at Glengarry West in the Latrobe Valley. No longer content with bringing in the cows on horseback, Sophie decided to take things further.
Hopefully she puts a bit more weight on, so she's a bit fatter and a bit rounder. Big dreams, but I don't think it'll happen. All the cows have brands, and the branded one that I ride is 520. So I can also ski behind her too. So that's fun too when it's really slippery and muddy and greasy and that. I grab onto her hips and she pulls me along, which is good. So she's pretty chilled out all the time, but sometimes she can get a bit of speed in her. So yeah. She can sometimes be at the front, sometimes at the back. It really depends what time of year, I guess.
The family's dairy farm is saturated from recent rain. Despite the muddy laneways, Sophie said she got the idea to ride one of the cows into the dairy from a show on TV. But it doesn't always go to plan, and the mud is always waiting for you if things go wrong.
I tried to ride her today, but it didn't really work out. I kind of got on a little bit funny and I fell off and I landed straight on it like I face planted and I winded myself. So, yeah, that was pretty funny. It really depends on how they're feeling, I think, because sometimes they're feeling, oh, yeah, you can ride me, and sometimes like, nah, not happening. And they just walk off on you real fast. I'd rather ride horses, I think.
Sophie's parents say she's a bit of a daredevil and she loves getting around the farm on her horse.
We have 2 horses, Ali and Joy. We recently sold our other one, Squirt. She went all the way up to New South Wales. And, yeah, this is Ali, and she's 21 years old. I've had her probably about 5 years now. And she's the horse that I ride the most because she's so good. We like getting the cows in because Ali's good at that. And it's my job that I do for a little bit of pocket money.
Despite all this freedom, she still has something in common with those students who have a smaller backyard.
It's a bit hard when you're away from the teachers and that and you can't get one-on-one help, but it's not that bad. Like, it's good to be able to come out here and just do all sort of jobs and that. Feeding the potties and riding the horses. Dad always wants my help too. Yeah. I'd probably prefer to do it in the classroom because I don't get distracted. Because I just get distracted at home and it doesn't really work out.
How good is that? That is just awesome, I reckon. That riding a cow there is Glengarry's Sophie Christensen speaking with Peter Somerville about the difficulties of homeschooling and what she's really doing in between classes. And you've got to think kids in lockdown on farms probably have it a bit better, don't they? A bit more space, a bit more varied lifestyle to do things. Sounds great. Kim says, I had a steer called Spud. It used to be able to sit on and had a Limousin cow that used to swim in the dam with us on top. Could have a moving conversation with her and she would wait for me to come home from work at the front gate and bolt down the paddock up beside the fence and drive and kick her heels up, says Kim. Kim, that's fantastic memories. Thank you very much for that. This one says, Warwick, back at the time of the famous chainsaw was at his peak, a bloke was riding a quiet bull with a saddle on him at the Brisbane Ekka. When someone asked him what his name was, old mate with a deadpan answer said, Hacksaw. I like that. Chainsaw and hacksaw. Absolutely brilliant. Keep them coming. There's a few more cow memories, riding a cow memories coming in. It's my favourite talkback topic I think I've ever done. To keep the people who want serious news happy, let's keep doing some of that, though, here on the Country Hour and talk records. We love talking records on this program, too. The trend of skyrocketing land prices has well and truly arrived in the Mallee, with a parcel of land at Oyen selling for more than $1,500 an acre last week. While that mightn't sound all that impressive compared to other parts of the state, it's big money for Northern Mallee country. Selling agent Michael Fernandez from Nutrien Hardcourts says COVID forced the auction online, but that had no effect on the result.
We were planning to have an open auction on the property, and when it was announced by the Premier on Saturday the 21st that would not be allowed, we hastily organised a virtual online auction for the same time, same place, and it, at the end, worked in very, very well, dealing with a lot of clients that probably have never, ever done a Zoom auction before, and working through the process. Didn't hold back the bidding on the day. We had a tremendous amount of support, both observers and participating bidders.
So 2 parcels, one went for $1,581 an acre, the other one for $1,382 an acre. That might not sound exceptional maybe for southern producers, but just put that in perspective, how incredible it was and how much higher it was than expectations.
Yeah, correct, Angus. It was very high than the expectations. Around about November, December, the properties were valued at approximately $800 an acre in the old scale. I thought leading into the auction that it was going to probably realise at least between $1,000 and $1,200 an acre in the old scale. The vendor's instructions and reserves were around about that mark, and it ended up realising over the whole 1,424 acres, an average price of $1,475 per acre, which was a massive 61% above the vendor's expectation and the reserve set for the day.
What was the vendor's reaction?
I think they're still trying to understand, and obviously very, very happy with the whole process, because once again they were thrown in the option to go online and never ever done that before. So they are really, really excited and happy, and obviously the whole process.
Just describe the land for me. Was there anything particularly special about it?
No, it's pretty typical. Very, very well located to the Oyen township, only being a few kilometres, but no major structural improvements, no significant water or fencing infrastructure. The property is actually currently leased too, which is a factor to consider, which is still under lease for all of next year too. So the incumbent purchaser has to obviously understand and accept that that property is under a lease agreement until March 2023. So there's some other factors that one should consider, thinking that this is a very, very good result.
It's always difficult to talk records, and as soon as you do, you'll have someone come out of the woodwork and say, not the case. But is this a record for that particular part of the world?
I won't stand that it is the actual record, but it's my knowledge, being around for such a long time. Oyen is a good, healthy mallee country that produces excellent wheats and barleys, etc. But usually the yardstick is a little bit further out west at Walpia, Bundibal and south, Tempe, Speed, and through that country. But this price that we achieved, I don't recall in recent sales, particularly under auctions conditions, that realising that rate.
And Michael, I understand that the purchaser was actually someone who isn't currently farming?
Yeah, correct. The purchaser is a long-established business owner. He's got his own business in Oyen. So he brought both parcels, and he's going into it with an investment and also opportunity to farm after 2023.
It's a bit of a tired old phrase, Michael, but is this the new normal for land pricing now? Because you don't typically see land prices go back. They usually either plateau or go forward.
I've been saying that for 12 months, Angus, that one would surely think it will plateau. Agree, it doesn't go backwards. There's always factors to consider: land values, obviously location and farming practices used, presentation, all those structural infrastructure, etc. But I would have thought it was plateauing out by now. But on the results of this last Friday, I honestly don't know. I've never seen this sort of interest and this demand in 40 years of being in the rural industry in Australia.
Amazing statement. That's Michael Fernandez, rural real estate specialist with Nutrien Harcourts, speaking there with Angus Verley. Let's stay with Oyen for a few moments now with a nice little story. A grazier who was helped out by fellow farmers during drought says it was time for him to return the favour. Terry Smith from Scarsdale Station between Broken Hill and Menindee wants to see others do the same if they can. So he donated 25 lambs to be sold at the Oyen sales after farmers from the town sent him hay during the last drought.
The story behind it is, I guess, back in, about 2019, in the middle of the roaring drought, and some guys who I knew from down there just gave me a call out of the blue, they'd organised a bit of a hay drive for a few cockies up this way, and they rolled up with a few truckloads of hay and dropped off 25 bales of hay in the middle of the drought and a package for the missus and the kids, and took us out for dinner and sort of lifted our spirits a bit, which was fantastic. So I thought when I get back on my feet, I'd like to repay them, which we kind of have, and we've got a bit of a season behind us now. So I thought I'll donate 25 lambs to the sale at Oyen on Thursday, and then the guys who bought the hay up can pick a charity of their choosing in the Oyen community and put the money towards whatever they want.
Terry, for the uninitiated, 25 lambs, what would be the going price?
I don't know. Hopefully $200 each, maybe a bit better. They've been down at Oyen in the feedlot for sort of 2.5 months with some other lambs I sent down, and hopefully they're looking nice and fat. Mate, it would have been sort of good to get down there and have a look at them, but that's had the brakes put on it.
It's a pretty generous donation. That's, well, on those figures, around $5,000.
Well, I guess it is a pretty generous donation, Andrew. When I sort of come up with the idea the land prices wasn't quite where it is now, so they've done pretty well out of the land prices going north in the last month or two. But, yeah, it is, I guess, at the end of the day, it's not a huge impost to the 25 lambs. It's 25 lambs is 25 lambs, but, yeah, in the numbers that I guess we come up with in 12 months, it's probably not going to be a great deal.
What's the reaction been from Oyen?
They're a bit surprised, I think, and I guess my point of view is a lot of people had a lot of support through the drought and just random packages that turn up in the mail and hay drives and stuff like that, which helped a lot of people out. And I think I feel that I'm in a position to be able to put something back into a community. I actually know where this donation came from out of that community, so I can put something back in. But I was just sort of hoping to get other producers that are out of the drought or on a recovery mission to maybe have a bit of a think about doing something similar and picking out a charity or a community group and giving them a couple of sheep or 3 sheep or however many they want, or get with their neighbours and make up a decent line and sort of put a bit back into the community that's sort of stood behind farmers through the drought.
That's Terry Smith from Scarsdale Station speaking there to Andrew Schmidt, donating 25 lambs to the Oyen sale. Love to know how they've gone. If anyone has a line on that, get in contact. countryhour@abc.net.au or 0467 842 722. Market time. Let's start today at Bairnsdale. G'day, Brendan Fletcher.
G'day, Warwick. Numbers increased to 280. That's 100 more, with the usual buyers operating in a mixed market. Quality improved with a few more prime lots and a smaller proportion of cows. The trade cattle were mostly heifers, which improved a little. Grown steers and bullocks sold firm. Manufacturing steers lifted 10 cents. Plain dairy cows eased 5 to 15 cents. Heavy, well-finished cows improved slightly, with processors loading cows for an estimated 7.35 to 8.05 cents a kilogram carcass weight. Heavy bulls eased slightly. Yearling heifers to the trade sold from 4.37 to 4.65, grown steers and bullocks 4.32 to 4.70, heavy manufacturing steers 3.93 to 4.25, most light and medium weight cows 2.40 to 3.86, heavyweights 3.40 to 4.26, heavy bulls 3.04 to 3.42. This is Brendan Fletcher reporting for MLA.
And let's go to Wagga Lambs and Leanne Dax.
Good afternoon. 40,000 lambs and 8,600 sheep sold to a reduced field of export buyers. All domestic processors were in attendance, however. Quality across new season's lamb categories was very good, with a very good selection of store lambs also. Old lambs were well supplied, although there were a lot more off-types penned. Competition was erratic and with buyers in and out of the market. Old lambs suffered a price correction of $25 to $35, with heavy lambs hardest hit. New season's lambs came off the boil $5 to $10. Old trade lambs $150 to $250. Heavy old lambs 26 to 30 kilo, $247 to $288. Over 30 kilos, $280 to $325. Young trade lambs 21 to 24 kilo, $190 to $255, averaging 970 cents a kilogram carcass weight. 24 to 26, $254 to $270. 26 to 30 kilo, $271 to $294. Store lambs to restock and feed gained $8, $123 to $214. Merino trades $148 to $225. Heavy merinos $220 to $289. I'm Leanne Dax for MLA.
Thanks very much for that, Leanne. So many wonderful riding a cow stories, and I can't read them all. Gabrielle says, Warwick, as a young girl who was horse mad but lived on a dairy farm with non-horsey parents, I rode a beautiful Jersey Friesian cross called Carol. I would have had hay bands for reins and sit on her while she waited to be milked. That started a horse addiction which lasted nearly 50 years and is still my passion. Thank you for that. And Angela, the story about your cow, Queen Elizabeth, is magnificent. I'll try and find time to read it tomorrow. Have a great day. It's 1 o'clock.